This is Lauren Alexander, and you're listening to the Groove Lab podcast. Hey, thanks so much for being here. This podcast is all about the people who make up the music industry. Today, I've got Grammy Award winner Tim Kimsey. He is a producer, an engineer, and just all around a super cool guy. And I feel very fortunate that he agreed to talk to me and be on the podcast. So let's get him on the phone.
Lauren?
Hello.
Hi there. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
So good to hear your voice. Oh my gosh.
It's been a long time.
It has. It has indeed.
Well, how have you been? What's been going on?
Well, we're dealing with all this mess just like everybody else is. I've learned to conduct my business out of a 10 by 10 a 10 foot by 10 foot square room, and I'm hoping to find some joy in some of this at some point, but I don't know. It just feels like this is so weird where we are with not being able to, socially get to touch and say hi and hug and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, it's been a little weird.
For sure.
How about you guys? How are y'all doing?
We're good. We're just, same thing, hanging in there. We've got, we're friends on Facebook, so I'm sure you've seen. We've got a almost 3-year-old now.
Yeah.
So that has been fun, but yeah, no, it's good. We're good.
Excellent. Well, I know that you were going to ask me a few questions, but I'm kind of curious as to how all of this mess has how it's affected you, your family, everybody.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sure it's been pretty devastating.
It really has. There were a few months there where we honestly didn't know how we were going to pay our rent. We didn't know how we were going to, keep the lights on because, fortunately, my husband, he's a guitar technician and a guitar builder. And so, fortunately, there are still people that have money to spend on things like that.
Sure.
So it's been hard. It's hard whenever the majority of your income comes from playing live gigs. And then, and even then, we're not living with lots of money,
No. I think that's the confusion that takes place with a lot of folk is that they think, oh, we can get into the music business and we're going to make tons of money and we're going to do all this stuff. And then when they start finding out, hey, this is like a bunch of hard work.
Right.
That changes everything really fast.
It does.
Really
I think,
fast.
honestly, you do it because you love it, not because you're going to make a bunch of money off of it. And eventually you might. There are people that do. I'm happy to make a living doing it. I'm happy to be able to pay our bills with it. But yeah, it's just been weird this past, I guess, has it almost been a year? When did this start? In March?
Well, we're 3/4 of a year into it. The only reason why I know this is because I'm also a school teacher and we go by quarters.
Okay.
So yeah, we're 3/4 in. We're 3/4 of the way in now.
That's just nuts. That's crazy. It feels like it's been 10 years at the same time, though. I feel like I've aged a whole lot.
Well, the one thing that I'm discovering, and of course I've been doing this for, a long, long time, but the one thing that I'm discovering is that, it does. It messes with your emotions. It messes with your psyche. It messes with your ability to make good decisions. Maybe I don't know how to say it, but I've caught myself time and time again. It's like, would you normally make that decision? And the answer is usually no.
For sure.
Usually no.
For sure.
Well, it's really good to hear that you guys are, hanging in there,
Yeah.
that you're making ends meet. I think that's probably a fair assessment of what's going on. We're doing exactly the same thing here in the Kimsey household. Um, Truth is, Lauren, is that um, production went to nothing. I mean, it literally went to nothing around March of this year,
Right.
February, March of this year. And yeah, we all had to start getting really pretty creative as to how we're going to go about doing this if we're gonna if we're gonna stay in the business
Right.
at all.
Right. Well, tell me about that. Tell me what have you been doing?
Well, the truth is that I've hunkered down to be an instructor. Um, that right now seems to be the one thing that is still allowing us to keep going. When I say us, meaning me, I guess.
Yeah.
As a 60-year-old recording engineer and producer, I think it's fair to say that most folks are not on the prowl for for old aging aging producers or whatever. But I think that there's a wonderful thing that has happened, at least in my camp, and that is that I have a few colleagues who understand that the age thing brings quite a bit of experience along the way.
Right.
And what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to explain to the younger generations of upcoming producers, engineers, and folk coming through our program there at the school is that it's so much more than just the technical aspects, but the if you will, the how do we say, the mechanics of how things work. And so, to answer your question, um, the school, doing schoolwork, being an instructor, being a lab instructor, someone who can go sit in with students and be able to say, I wouldn't do that, or I would do this, I would maybe think about this in a different way, has been, honest to goodness, it's been truly a blessing to be able to do that. Because, well, I'll say it like this. I think um, as you and I know each other, you've always known me as maybe like a live sound guy, someone who's been at the helm of a mixing console for live events. And we both know that that fell to the wayside very, very fast um, when the pandemic hit. It was like everything got shut down.
Right.
And so, not to be overly long-winded about this, but my respite, my saving grace was the fact that I have a school who believes in me and said, look, we still have to keep going. And we've got plenty of folk who want to know how this works. And so if you're on board with all of this, we would love to have you continue with us and keep going. And I just got to tell you that it has been an absolute blessing to be able to do that. Because I think otherwise, um, I would be maybe driving a truck for Dr. Pepper or somebody that I really, really like.
Right.
But it definitely would not be doing. Post production or audio for, for visuals and stuff of that nature.
Right. So you're teaching
So
at Media Tech, right?
that is
Media Tech.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it mostly like online stuff right now, or what is it? What is
Right
it like?
now, it is. We are, well. Great question. First of all, we are pushing for our students to show up at the school.
Okay.
The reason why we're doing that is because we have rooms available for these students to go in and get their work done and do it very, very well. Here's the dilemma, is that not everyone is convinced that out into the world is a very good idea. I have students who, let's say, for example, a male student might want to come to the school, but maybe they cannot because they have a wife at home that might be pregnant. And that being the case, that student is not going to make their way to the school itself.
Right.
So to kind of answer your question, yes, we're doing everything online right now. It's kind of cool in certain regards to be able to tell my students, hey, guys, we're going to take a look at this video. This is how it's done. You can double check me to make sure that I'm telling you the truth about all the stuff. That in some ways it's really good. In some ways it's really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Because of exactly what we're all going through right now. As you well know, a lot of the studio experience is a hands-on. You need to be able to not only put your hands on it, but able to hear and see what it is that you're doing. Right. So again, to kind of answer your question, yeah, it's been different. It's been very difficult in some areas, but also kind of cool in others. I've got a love-hate thing with this virtual stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure it was a huge adjustment. Like you said, it's not the norm. And I know for me, like I'm a hands-on type of learner. So I don't know how these people are learning through. I mean, are you doing Skype sessions or like?
Yeah, so the way that we've been operating, well, first of all, let me back up and just say that my particular area of expertise is 5.1 surround mixing for film. And so, doing a Google Classroom where everyone's involved with what's going on. They're watching the instructor go on. But the problem with all of that is that they're listening in mono. With 5.1 surround sound, we need to be able to hear, 6 channels of audio and where that's placed. And so, yes, that's become, I don't want to say it's a hurdle, but it's something that we have to overcome so that folks understand that, 5.1 surround sound audio, it's really cool in certain regards, but if you don't have an understanding of it and don't know how that works, yeah, it can become quite cumbersome and quite confusing.
Yeah.
Should we say.
Yeah, I'm sure. Man. Well, I'd like to kind of back up and start at I know you through my dad, right?
That's correct.
How did you guys meet? I don't know this story. You've just always kind of been there.
Here's this guy over here that I met. Yeah. Okay, so here's my version of it. Is that first of all, let me just say that I love your dad beyond words.
Right.
Your dad is a really good guy.
For sure.
Second of all, is that we met at a live performance. This is going years and years back. And for whatever reason, your dad decided that maybe I should become a part of his world, his life. And so your dad reached out to me to see if I would be interested in doing live sound for not only him, but for different venues in East Texas, dealing with some well-known artists. And the bottom line to it all is like we had the equipment, we had everything that we needed, and your dad needed someone to kind of fill the gap. Your dad needed someone to take hold of whatever the situation was and run the show.
Okay.
And so that's where you and I and your dad and many others, that's where we started to kind of start to meet and have an understanding that my role was to take care of my artists that I had in front of me. And that would include yourself, that would include so many artists in East Texas that would go through these different venues. And at the end of the day, it really kind of came down to like-minded people working together.
Gotcha.
And I hope that this will actually make the edit. You just got to know, Lauren, that I love your dad beyond words.
Oh.
He is an amazing individual. Really, really good guy. Really good guy.
He talks the same way about you. He was very excited that you were going to be on the podcast. So I'm sure he's listening.
Oh, I hope so.
Well, cool. Okay. It's always weird, like when you meet someone when you're younger through your parents, and then they're just there. I don't know. I just didn't know the story. So it's good to know.
No, it's really a great story. I'm hoping, Lauren, that I'm the parent to my kids that your dad was to you and your sister, and just kind of moving through life in general. I have these little checks and balances that every once in a while I have to go, well, did I do this very well? Maybe not. Maybe, I think that you understand this too. There's no reference manual to being a parent,
right.
And there's no reference manual to being, a person that's going to take on responsibility and try to teach your kids the differences between right and wrong.
Exactly.
But one of the things that, not to be off on a tangent about any of this stuff, but one of the things that I definitely can say is that from my perspective, when your dad approached me to maybe come on board with him for live sound and doing shows and doing live sound and stuff of that nature, it really was kind of a no-brainer, because your dad and we are very much alike. We like a lot of the same things, and we definitely agree on so many aspects of production.
Well, that's cool. Let's talk about you have a podcast too, right?
I do. I've got a podcast that is called Audio Knuckle Busters. We like to call ourselves AKB, acronym of AKB.
Nice.
I must say that this is something else with the pandemic that has hit and everything. I'm not going to blame it all on the pandemic, but I got to tell you that I've learned that, if you're going to be a podcaster, you got to stick with it. You have got to stick in there. And I'm learning this kind of the hard way. What Audio Knucklebusters is all about is it's real people talking about real situations. It's not technical at all. It talks about life in the industry of being in the music business and being a producer, being a recording engineer, just basically the stuff that we come upon. And like I said, not technical, yet at the same time, we talk about quite a bit about life as a production person. And involved with all of that, I was blessed enough to be able to have a female producer / engineer be involved with us with this Audio Knucklebusters that we've got going on.
Well, that's cool. I was listening. I was internet stalking you to get ready for this interview, and so I was listening
cool.
to that. So yeah, that's really cool. But I did not realize how much work would go into making a podcast. And I honestly, if I don't know how you even do it, like teaching, and I mean, I'm at home all day, so I have time, but I still feel like I don't have time, so that's pretty incredible that you're able to balance all of that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I don't think I'm doing a very good job on the podcasting side, as no. I mean, when your attention is focused on one thing, usually the other things are going to fall to the wayside.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, that's kind of what has happened with AKB, with Audio Knucklebusters, is that our intentions are really, really good. And yes, we're going to keep going with all of that stuff. But the one thing that I've noticed about me, and I tell everybody who's a part of AKB, I go, guys, y'all are going to have to show me some grace and give me some, cut me some slack on some of this stuff, because I got to tell you, not always is my attention totally focused on, the podcast or this or that. The other thing, and and honestly, I think that you could probably relate to this, Lauren, is that I started noticing that after I would do a recording of the podcast, I would spend hours and hours and hours and hours on post for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that being said, I started realizing that it wasn't going to be, how do I say this? I wasn't going to be able to keep that going for long periods of time, because in some cases, some of these podcasts were, 3 hours long, 4 hours long.
Right.
And then when you get into post on the stuff, a 3 or 4 hour podcast is going to require 20 to 30 hours of doing post production on stuff.
Yep.
Well, how do I say this where it makes sense? If I need to be at work and making money, that's really hard to do when you're investing in something that that is your baby, yet at the same time, you're not making income from that. So my point is that I don't really feel I've done a very good job at getting my podcast out. But along with that, my intentions are, as time moves on, we're gonna get there. We're totally gonna get there to where maybe instead of doing a 3 hour podcast, maybe we're gonna do a 45-minute podcast.
Exactly.
And that becomes much easier. Yes, along the way.
Yeah.
So I too, even though I think of myself as like this, 40-year veteran of doing post-production, doing production itself, so on and so forth, there's still a lot to learn as we move forward. Meaning that, sometimes you got to shut the brain off and tell yourself, look, I got to get this done, and I've got a deadline to meet. So stop all of the extra thought process and get on with it. Get this thing going.
For sure. It is hard to turn that part of your brain off, though.
Really hard. Really hard.
Especially if you're, which I'm not a huge perfectionist by any means. Like, I'm pretty go with the flow, but I feel like with you being in audio, I feel like, I can't imagine editing a 3-hour podcast. Like, I don't.
It is super, super silly, crazy. Because what I found myself doing, and maybe you find yourself doing this too. I found myself taking out the ums and the ahs, and hey, we got to speed this thing up just a little bit. And so I was driving myself nuts with trying to perfect it to a point. And then finally someone stepped in and they go, Tim, stop the silliness. A podcast really should be just really natural. People, sitting down, having a conversation about what's going on in their world. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, is that it's not so much about making it look and sound so professional as much as it is, look, we're all human beings. We all want to know what's going on with one another. We all want to know, how is this person dealing with the stuff that we're all going through.
Right. So
not to be overly long-winded about this, Lauren, but I would say that it's a learning process for all of us. Definitely. Me included.
Yeah.
And I've got a daughter here who 15 years old, and she goes, Dad, why are you walking around angry all the time? And I go, well, it's not so much that I'm angry as much as it is, I need to I need to. I guess what I need to figure out is how to manage my time a little bit better, because I got to tell you, it's real easy in post production to sit there and spend hour after hour after hour, and when it's all said and done, I'm not sure anyone's going to recognize or realize that you've spent 20 or 30 hours on something. I just don't know that they're going to realize that.
Right. And also, people are not judging you as hard as you're judging yourself. And that has been something I've had to tell myself over and over again, because I say stupid things, especially right now. I have not been getting much social interaction. So you kind of like forget how to have a conversation with people, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like, it feels kind of unnatural to talk to someone outside of your circle. And so, yeah,
yes.
I feel like people are not going to judge you like you're judging yourself. Nobody cares if you say like and okay, some people might care, but
Well, I think it's really interesting that you put that out there like that, because this is what I tell my students. Look, you guys, you as students, you're wanting to impress me. I don't know who you're trying to impress, but you guys are bigger judges on yourself than I would ever be. And I absolutely tell my students, look, I'm not looking for perfection. I want you to take ownership of whatever it is that you're working on. Take ownership of that and make it yours. Who am I to sit there and say, hey, this is perfect? First of all, I don't believe in perfection. This kind of goes back to some of much smarter people than me that have put the comment out there. If it's perfect, it's probably not of this world. And so my point is that I tell my students on a regular basis, and they have to be propped up sometimes. We all, as human beings, we need that interconnection, that ability to communicate, to talk, to discuss all of these things. And that's the one thing that this pandemic has done to everybody, is it's given us this distancing. And honest to goodness, I really believe that this is what's making everything so incredibly weird for everybody. Is that Lauren, if I was working with you, um, first of all, we're not going to be able to do some recording virtually. We're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to be in East Texas recording, and then for me to be in West Texas and have any kind of an idea of what emotion that you have on your songs.
Right.
And this is what I'm telling my students. Listen, guys, I have no clue. I have absolutely zero idea what you personally are going through. I have no way of knowing that. And at the same time, you guys have no way of knowing what I'm going through. But here's the one thing that we can pull together on, is that if we can arrive at how do I say this? If we can arrive at a meeting ground where we can have a discussion about the do's and the don'ts of production, is it going to be the same? No. But is it going to be better than not communicating at all? And the truth is that in my little world that I live in, it really kind of comes down to being able to place a phone call, just like what we're doing right now. You and I both know this. We haven't spoken in a long time.
Yeah.
But right now, because of a phone conversation, just the simple fact that I know you and you know me, we're able to kind of pick up the pieces where it left off maybe 2 or 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And just continue. And so for me, that's the weird part of all of this, is that I love the idea of one-on-one, being in a discussion with the artist, being in a discussion with maybe it's the producer. I'm doing a lot of post-production now for film and TV. And it's imperative that you talk with the director so that they can show you their emotions about stuff. And this is, once again, this is the really hard part, is because it's really hard to put that into words and have an expression in text. It's really hard to do that.
Oh, yeah. So easy to misread or misunderstand someone's point. So easy.
I never understood it until texting came around, quite honestly, because once again, I'm old school, and it used to be, hey, if you wanted to communicate with somebody, you pick up the phone and you give them a call, and you could tell through the tone of their voice whether they were up and excited about something, if they weren't, or whatever.
Yeah.
Texting changed all of that because, well, you can't really tell if someone's angry or, super pissed off about something, or maybe they're happy about things. Texting changed all of that. And so for me, this is what I'm telling my students. I'm going, guys, unless I hear from you via a phone call, or check this out, an email going, look, I'm not going to be able to participate in this or whatever. I do not know what the temperature is of the moment. I just don't know. And quite honestly, Lauren, for all of us, I think that's where this is the weird part for artists. It's a weird part for producers, for guys like me who are production folk. We have to break this thing down to where we're communicating.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, it's kind of broken down to this. I saw the genie let out of the bottle well over 30 years ago, talking about, audio being recorded in a professional environment and being mixed, and all of the things that we did with audio. And then when the CD came around, that's when I considered the genie was kind of let out of the bottle. Well, from there, it's just exploded from there, with people, doing really cool things along the way. And then here we are, and all of a sudden we're all being told, hey, you can't do this anymore. So for me, what it did was, it told me, look, if you're gonna keep going and keep participating, which honestly, I don't have any other route to go.
Right.
I don't want to be a ditch digger. I don't want to be I don't want to be a phone person. I don't want to really be a truck driver for Dr. Pepper. But um, if things keep going the way that they're going, which I don't think that they will, but if they keep going the way that they are, uh, I might have to start thinking about another gig,
Right.
all the way around.
Well, that's kind of something
And
I
it's
wanted
really
to.
sad.
Oh, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, that's something I kind of wanted to ask you about. You've been doing this for 40 something years, and I feel like you have, I mean, the way that things are done have continued to change over and over again, and you've had to um keep just adjusting to the way
Yeah.
you do things, and the way things are recorded. And so it is kind of like you have to keep reinventing yourself, and I mean, it's a good thing to keep learning, but I mean, it's also, if you're if you drive a trash truck, you don't have to keep reinventing yourself and keep adjusting. You know what you do every day. So I was just curious about your experience with that.
Okay, so first of all, great question. You kind of give me a little bit of some chill bumps when you ask that question, because the reinventing part is happening more often than it ever has in the past. It used to be, and believe it or not, this is actually a subject matter that could be looked into. But it used to be a couple of things. Number one, to reinvent oneself usually would happen about once every 7 to 8 years. And I mean, that's a pretty fair target window. Hey, every 7 years, we'll call it the 7 year itch. You need to reinvent yourself. This is awesome. Okay, great. Well, that reinventing now has come down to about every, I'm gonna say about every 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
And I think a portion of that has to do with the fact that technology keeps moving forward. And yeah, we have to keep up with what's going on. So I'm going to come back at you and say, look, that's a great question. How do you go about doing that? It's easier for me as a human being to be able to follow along with the new upcoming things that are going on than it is to try to convince other upcoming engineers, producers, or people that are interested in production. It's easier for me to follow along the new changes than it would be for me to stay put. um, Stay put and go, this is the way that we're going to do it from now on. Trust me on this when I say, there are plenty of engineers and producers out there that have their staple go to every time kind of thing. But the one thing that I'm learning is that there's never any given day that's exactly going to be the same way. And quite honestly, that's the reason why I'm in this business, is because it's not cookie cutter. It's not the same thing day in and day out. As much as I would love for that to sometimes be the case, don't have to think about it. Just go do your job and come home and call it a day. There's parts of that are interesting to me, but not so interesting that I want to give up my engineering gig.
Definitely.
I'll definitely go through the hard times with the engineering gig, and sometimes not knowing where the next dime's going to come from. I'll very easily go through that to have the freedom to be creative and to be an artist within my own right.
Yeah.
And for your listeners' sake, um, if I could be so bold to say this, um, engineering and producing is an art form. It's being able to maybe sit down with the artist and find out what the artist's vision is, and then to make that vision come to life with all of that. That's another thing that I'm learning, is that it's not so much about the mechanics. Um, it's not so much about how do I do this as much as it is about the communication and the human relationship and the human bonding that takes place between individuals along the way. And so to kind of put that whole thing to rest with the whole deal, um, if I'm being super honest about it, Lauren, I think a part of the thing that drives me is I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared to death that I'm going to miss something. I'm scared. It's not so much of I'm going to piss somebody off, or I'm going to do a wrong move here or there, or I did something wrong. The thing that scares me the most is that I'm going to lose my communication with other like-minded people. And that's the one thing that keeps driving me. It's the one thing that keeps driving me to, how do I say this? When I think I'm ready to stop, it's the one thing that keeps telling me, no, you're not done yet. You need to keep going. You need to keep going.
Well, and that is so true. It is very scary that it would just be so easy to be just left behind. If you don't
Yeah.
adjust with the times and, figure it out, like, you know what, there's somebody else right behind you that has figured this out. And it is very scary.
Yeah, I don't think of it so much as, hey, I don't want them to have it.
Right.
I obviously, as a teacher, I do. I want everyone to get it.
Right.
But I think we both also understand that whether you're talking about music or if you're talking about production for a movie or whatever it might be, um, sometimes, I can honestly say this as a recording engineer, as a uh, editor, as someone who's doing sound design and so on and so forth. Sometimes you miss the mark. Sometimes you miss the boat, and it requires a discussion with the artist. Sometimes it requires a discussion, in my case, with the producer themselves, who's responsible for the project, and kind of go, okay, so explain to me one more time uh, what it is that we're going for, and how is it that I can, help in this area. And again, this is a huge thing for students coming up through the ranks, if you will. Sometimes it's really hard to be, how do we say, positive. Yeah, have a positive outlook on things when we know that, we may be locked down for another, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4, 5 months.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yet I've got students going, I'm ready to go do this. As soon as I get out of school, I want to go, I want to go invest myself in this. So I guess where I'm going with all of it is that um, I like to think of everything that I'm doing is with intent, with purpose, even though sometimes it seems like it's really cookie cutter and I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over. I know in the back of my mind, it's going to serve a purpose, and it's going to be better. Um, it's going to be better in the end if I will just keep putting that foot forward every day, moving into production.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, you just have to keep going.
We do. We I think it's fair to say I've run into several individuals I don't care about all that much. They're just not somebody I like,
Right.
and they probably don't like me. But at the end of the day, I got to take that and put it to the wayside and go. I'm going to give them my best
Right.
because uh, I know that you know this as an artist. Your husband knows this as an artist. I think everybody who is in my immediate circle, we all understand this, that even when we don't feel like it, it's in our best interest to keep moving forward and giving our best towards whatever the situation might be. Why? Well, because we have reputations and we have things um, that we need to protect. And again, this is something I tell my students. I've got students that are 18 years old, 19 years old, and they think it's all. Hopefully, you'll allow me to cuss for just a second.
Yeah, yeah.
They think it's all shits and giggles for a hot minute. Hey, this is fun. Well, um, it is until you turn this into a professional thing, where you've got folks looking at you on the professional level, and sometimes that's really difficult to go, yeah, I'm going to give my best today. Sometimes you don't feel like it.
Right.
Sometimes you feel like just staying in bed.
Yeah.
And so I guess my point is, Lauren, is that you're a seasoned veteran when it comes to the performance side of things. There's times when you don't feel like getting up on that stage. There are times when you don't feel like performing. And so for me, as an audio guy, I got to tell you, I never signed up to be an instructor per se, but for me, on any given day, it feels like I'm doing a performance.
Yeah.
And there's days I don't feel like doing that. But I've got to suck it up. And, it's like, guys, I feel like crap today and I don't feel like teaching, but guess what? I'm going to do it. Why? Because you guys need that information. You need to have an experience. And so we're just going to make it happen. We're just going to make it happen.
Well, and it's kind of like working out too. Like you always feel better when you're done and you gave it your best.
It is. It is.
Well, I'd love to hear about I know you've worked with a lot of people. a lot of well-known people. I'd love to hear maybe some stories that you have. And just I'd love to know what that was like.
Okay. So stories about well-known artists. All right, so you've got some really cool people,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got some really not so cool people. um, without pointing out names or anything of that nature,
Right.
here's what I can tell you. Probably my biggest first go around with a really well-known artist. Um, I was not prepared for that. It just kind of happened. Some would say luck, but I don't believe in luck. I believe in being luck. Luck to me is being prepared to take advantage of the situation when it arises.
Yeah.
So, in a nutshell, that's what luck is. Um, so I definitely was that. I was definitely prepared for that. But the person that I'm speaking of is a guy by the name of Vanilla Ice. I didn't know who this guy was, and quite honestly, I didn't really believe in what he was doing. You've got to kind of think back. This was in 1990. I was, as a individual, I was listening to other things than rap. That's for sure.
Right.
But I also kind of knew that this was probably going to be something that was going to stick around for a while. The short of the long is that that's for me really is where the it all started, was the recognition that as a recording engineer or as a production person, um, there is a possibility that if you get in at the ground level, you might could be included in on a point spread, or getting residuals coming to you on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I turned all that stuff down because the truth is that I needed a paycheck. I needed to get paid for the week.
Right.
And so I turned all that stuff down. And, hindsight being what it is, I might have been better off had I taken the points and gone that route. But we're not going to cry over any of that. What that actually allowed me to do was, the record company that was responsible for Vanilla Ice, they threw me several other opportunities to get involved doing record production. Now, all of that stuff led to eventually word of mouth, producers talking with other producers. And quite honestly, Lauren, I think of engineering as almost like being a baseball player. Here in the state of Texas, we have it's a right to work state, so there's no really a need for me to join like a union or something of that nature. My living has been based off of word of mouth, producer talking to another producer, people talking to people, hey, give this guy a shot, see what you think, so on and so forth. So it's always been in my best interest to be on my best behavior, first of all, but second of all, to how do I say this? To open myself up to where I'm hearing exactly what my role needs to be for whatever the project might need to be. And here's the example. So my role on Vanilla Ice, on the Ice Ice Baby, is very, very different than what it was, say, on another record that might be a heavy metal record. My role on the heavy metal record was not only an engineer, but it was co-producing along with the main producer. And where I'm going with all of this is that day in and day out, my role kind of changes. It shifts from one place to another, and I'm super happy with that because it really kind of sharpens my skill set, not only as a producer, as an engineer. In some ways, it actually sharpens my skills to be a writer, a songwriter in certain ways. It allows me to kind of go, I wouldn't do it that way, but I might do it this other way. And once again, kind of being in the middle of all of that, it allows someone like me to go, I like how they're doing this. I don't like how they're doing that. And then for me to form my own, I don't know what the word would be, but it would allow me to form my own ways of creating. Now, that being said, yes, a lot of people well known, and as I said, some are just, I'll take it to the grave. I'll take it to the grave that they were amazing human beings. We got to hang, we got to do lots of really cool stuff. And then there are other individuals where it's like, I was asked if I would be interested in participating in a really, 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 really big record. And my answer was no, I'm not. I don't really want to do that. And the reasons why, I didn't not tell that individual at the time the reasons why, but the truth is that I don't want to deal with the freaking drama that goes on with the band members and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, I'm a real laid back, easygoing guy. I just want everybody to love on one another. I understand that there's going to be conflict, especially if we're talking about music and someone has got a very strong opinion about something. All right, let's sit down and talk about it. But there's a big difference between that and actually someone being, pardon my pun, being an asshole in the middle of a session where we're not getting anything accomplished. So what I'm saying is that most of the big artists that I've ever worked with, they have been nothing but like, oh my gosh, I wish I could do this every day. I wish I could be here helping this person every day. But then I've had those sessions where well-known artists really, truly being a butt about something. It's like, you know what? No wonder nobody wants to work with this person because they're being an asshole and they don't want to, it's going to be their way or the highway. Right. Well, guess what? I'm to that age now to where it's like, I'm not your guy. I'm just not the guy who needs to be dealing with this.
No, I'm sure that's
I'd much rather be fishing. Yeah. I'd rather be out fishing, enjoying myself than dealing with that crap.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can't imagine. So I know you worked with Pantera.
I did. Yeah, we had a good 7-month run.
Tell me about that. Were you friends with those guys? What was that like?
Well, really good story with all of that as well. I met their dad. I met the Abbott brothers' dad before I ever met either one of the Abbott brothers. Their dad is a well-known, well-respected recording engineer, producer himself. And their dad actually lived here in the Metroplex for years and years and years as Benny Paul and Daryl were growing up in the Arlington area of Metroplex here in Texas. So I met him first, and he was very anxious to introduce me to his sons, Benny Paul and Daryl. Here was the thing, was that I was considerably older than either one of them. I was closer to their dad's age than I was their age. But that being said, I also had been to several shows that Pantera had performed. Now, granted, this was like in the late 80s, early 90s. The Abbott brothers, everybody in that band, being somewhere between 5 and 10 years younger than me, it was basically, for me, I could go to Six Flags Over Texas and actually see Pantera perform at Six Flags Over Texas.
Oh, wow.
Now, I was kind of a fish out of water back then because I was older than most of your average goers to a gig like that. But little did I know that years later that we would all come together as maybe one of the heaviest metal records, especially for the 90s, that would ever hit the market. And of course, that record was Far Beyond Driven. And that is, honest to goodness, that's where I met Vinnie Paul and Daryl Abbott of Pantera, as well as the rest of the band. Now, that having been said, we were, I'll say it like this, we were a very well-oiled machine. My role, along with a colleague of mine by the name of Sterling Winfield, we were the go-to guys that represented the facility, the recording studio itself. We had a producer by the name of Terry Date, who hails from Seattle, Washington. This guy, for any of your listeners, anybody who's curious about that, they need to go look up Terry Date, look up his name. His accolades are just huge. Well, this was the turning point for me to absolutely understand the ins and outs of metal music record production. Are we going to be successful every day? Most likely not. Are we going to get stuff accomplished? Yep, we're going to do that, and we're going to have fun doing it along the way. And quite honestly, Lauren, I got to tell you, that's probably where I established my attitude about, look, if I ain't having fun, then I might as well just not do it. I like having fun. And I think most artists and most, most people in production, if we ain't having fun, there's not really a reason to keep going.
Right.
There's just not. So it comes down to, were we enjoying each other? Without question. The Far Beyond Driven record, done in 1993-94, that's when that record was actually recorded. There was not a day that went by that we did not have a dadgone blast. We absolutely adored one another. We loved being at the recording facility. We loved rubbing elbows with one another. Was there work to be done? Without question. We had a ton of work to do. But it was such a joy to get to walk in and it's like, hey, man, good. I'm so glad that you're here today. What are we doing? And we would get started. And again, I got to come back to Terry Day, somebody like that. He was, I've expressed it like this. He was kind of the mother hen of everybody. He was the one guy who kept everybody on point. Now, it's no big secret that, Pantera loves to party. They love doing all kinds of stuff, drinking and smoking and doing all kinds of partying. But I can tell you this, we worked really, really hard and we played really, really hard. It was all for one and one for all. I feel extremely fortunate that I was a part of the production part of this, but the way that it was expressed to us, and it was really not that big of a deal, very nonchalantly, Dimebag would walk through and go, hey, we're going to go down here real quick. You in or out? And your answer damn well better be, I'm in. Because they were going to go anyway. And the way that it all kind of seemed to work, like I said, it was kind of like the Three Musketeers, all for one, one for all. So if the band was going to go somewhere, maybe it was to see someone else do a performance somewhere. Maybe it was to, I don't know quite how to say this. Maybe it was to an adult establishment of somewhere, of which these guys are well known to do. You probably wanted to be a part of that. And I'll even go as far back as saying, even back then, I was a married man. My first child was on its way. And yet I was being summoned to go to these places where I wasn't real sure if that was going to be a good thing or a bad thing. And so I got with Terry Date and I said, hey, Terry, I noticed we always go to these venues. We always go to these events that somebody suggests that we go to. But when we get there, I can't find you. Where are you? Where are you going to? And he goes, man, I get in a corner and I suggest that you do the same thing. I went, okay.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I learned from the master that sometimes, um, you can still be a part of, but yeah, get in a corner. Why? Well, because cameras are rolling. You don't want to find yourself in an awkward position, so on and so forth.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the flip side to all of that is I've had sessions with extremely well-known artists too that were just total, they were just total jerks.
Yeah.
And I could not get that artist out of the studio fast enough. But here was the weird thing about all of that. I'm still going to treat that artist as though they're the flavor of the year, the flavor of the day, the flavor of the month, whatever it might be, because I really feel like it's not to get on their good side or to get them to be less of a jerk or anything of that nature, but I really feel like if they understand that I'm on their side, that I'm pulling for them, I rely on them to do really well, just like they rely on me to do really well with what I'm doing, then it's an even playing field.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes the jerkiness can be pulled from the conversation. You might be wondering what I'm talking about. Well, um, I'll just say that I did a session. Once again, this is back in the 90s. It was a heavy metal session. It was a extremely well-known drummer who walked in on the session. I was going to be in session with this guy for about a week, for about 7 days. And the first thing there were no pleasantries exchanged when this particular drummer walked his way into the control room. It was basically down to business. And it wasn't any hi, how you doing? Good to be here. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. It was none of that. It was basically walked in. All right, no EQ, no gating, nothing being done to my drum kit. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. And of course, I'm thinking to myself, you can say this all you want to, but at the end of the day, my job does not rely on what you're telling me that you want me to do. My job at the end of the day is to make this record the best that I can make this record. So what I wound up having to do in that situation was say, I hear exactly what you're saying, but I'm going to tell you so that you don't get upset with me a little bit later on. I already have 9 songs on this record. And my job right now is to match what you're doing on this one song that you're doing. My job right now is to match this with the rest of the album. And by God, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I don't care what your personal feelings are right now. My job is to make for sure that this record is complete and it is the best that it can be. So all of that to say that once I got my point across to that particular person, the respect started coming. And the respect started coming from that other individual. Once they understood that I wasn't going to take crap off them and that I was going to stand up for what I was there for, they understood that maybe this guy can be trusted. So that's kind of a story when it comes to like a really well-known artist and so on and so forth. Here's what I can tell you, Lauren. 99.9% of well-known artists are incredible. They are incredible human beings. They get it. They put their pants on just like everybody else does. And they understand that. They have emotions just like you and I do. They have a say just like you and I do. And guess what? Those who are super, super, super cool in the studio, they understand that they might be here today and they could be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of what it comes down to. The industry as a whole doesn't really care. The industry as a whole is going to keep going. And that's what I find about so interesting about our conversation. I know it's been really pretty one-sided on my part, but as a conversation piece, when people start understanding that we rely on one another to make a go at this and for things to be better than what they could be as individuals, and once again, this is something I wrestle with on a daily basis. We do, as society, we do so much better being able to communicate with one another, literally getting to be in the presence of one another. As silly as this might sound, even doing a fist bump sometimes can make the difference of connecting and not making the connection at all.
I have really enjoyed hearing you talk about all of this stuff.
Yeah, I know our time is, I've gone really long with you.
No,
But
I appreciate it. I think it's so cool.
I'm just so, and your dad and I, we don't get enough opportunities to get to hang. And once again, I admire your dad tremendously. Um, we don't get enough of a chance to talk, but you also need to know this, that I admire you. Uh, from the distance that we are, I admire you. Why? Well, because I've watched you run the race. I've watched you do things that for a lot of people they would have said, this is too hard. I'm not in. I'm not in on this. Yet here we all are. And we're continuing to put that foot in front of, the one step in front of the other. And I honestly, I think that's what it takes. It takes a mindset to be able to move forward.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I am going to let you go eventually, but tell me about your Grammy.
Okay, well, the Grammy was established. I was a part of a production team. The short of the long is that I came in after several months of production recording. Let me back up just a little bit. So first of all, the Grammy is for a record called "The New Nation," "The New Nation" by Kirk Franklin, and it's a gospel. It's a gospel record that was done back in 97, 98. And again, just like what I've been so long-winded about, I got involved with that record because not because I knew that it was going to be a Grammy Award winner or that it was going to be all these accolades or anything of that nature. I got involved with that record because I was asked to. It was a really sweet and simple question. I got a phone call. It was on a Friday afternoon, much like today. I was in traffic. I was driving home, and I got a phone call from the manager of Kirk Franklin, personal manager, and basically it kind of went down like this. We've lost our head engineer for reasons that I cannot disclose at the moment, but we've had our eye on you for quite some time. Now, to kind of give you a perspective on this, I was working on another record in the same building, same recording studio, but just in a different studio. And so Kirk Franklin's management had been watching me from a distance for honestly a few months. And so when the head engineer went a different direction, I got the phone call to step into all of that. Little did I know that before it was all said and done, there would be somewhere between 13 and 15 different engineers that would have touched this project, that touched this record. Yeah. So to kind of sum it all up, I was able to get the phone call from management, basically saying, "Look, it's time for us to wrap this record up. Are you going to be able to, are you going to be able to go to Los Angeles for a while?" And of course, even back then, I had other people that I needed to answer to. I had people who was, I needed to give them an answer as to whether I was going to be in town or in the state, so on and so forth. So my question back to the management was, how long are we going to be in Los Angeles? And I heard this really big sigh on the other end of the phone. And it's like, look, man, I just need to hear from you right now. I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know how long you're going to be in Los Angeles. All I need to hear from you right now at this moment is, are you going to be in Los Angeles on Monday morning? And I said, well, yeah, of course I'm going to be in Los Angeles on Monday morning. Now, I just need to find out so that I can tell other people, when are we coming back, so that I've got an answer for some folks. Well, the truth of it is, no one really knew how long that was going to take. It came down to, I was in Los Angeles for right at a month. And it was finishing out the mixing of that record, of the New Nation record. Now, a part of this was, and you got to think of it like this, we're not talking small budgets here. We're talking $1 million budget for one record, which is unheard of today. I mean, we just don't hear of these recordings being done for $1 million. That's not done. Now, again, we're talking full analog recording, 2-inch recording. We're not talking Pro Tools. We're not talking getting anything done fast at all. So I was out there for a while. And when it was all said and done, what I found out a little bit later on, I was one of 5 different engineers that was mixing that record. Now, what got me invited to the Grammys and with all the accolades and all of that was the simple fact that somewhere along the way, we had been nominated as Best Engineered Record, as well as Best Gospel Album for the year of 1998. So that just changed everything. That just changed everything as far as how maybe I was looked at as a recording engineer and so on. And what I'm about to tell you is maybe it didn't go exactly the way that you would think that it was going to go. I had plenty of folk calling me up going, dude, this is going to be a life-changing event for you. You're not ever going to ever have to worry about work ever again. Your name is plastered all over the place as being the guy. Well, Lauren, I got to tell you, it's always a two-way street. It could have gone that way. It could have gone to where I'd never asked for another record ever again, or it could have gone the other way, which it did. Which the other way was, and I'm not super proud of this, but the other way was I did not receive phone calls to work on anybody's record for the next year and a half.
Oh, wow.
So for your listeners, you need to think about that for a second. It could have gone one of two ways, and it went the way that I really had hoped it would not have gone, which was, and I'm not real sure why that was. My personal thoughts was that the people who would have been calling me to do records for them, they knew that I was involved with the New Nation record, and so it was like, he's occupied, so we might as well not even bother giving him a phone call. But then there's another thought process, which could be, oh, he's big time now, so he's going to cost X amount more than what he normally would be. And kind of where I'm going with all of this is that folk need to understand, producers, engineers, anybody who's involved with the process, we're all the same. We still need to make a living. We still need to feel needed and wanted, and all of the things that make us make us desirable to to keep around, so on and so forth. So the short of the long with the Grammy is, it was a curse and a blessing all at the same time. I'm super proud of the fact that I got that award, that I was a part of that. But at the end of the day, it's not about the accolades. I have a very good friend by the name of Sterling Winfield. Sterling worked on the Pantera record with me. or I worked with him on the Pantera record. We were inseparable for long periods of times. We were just two peas in a pod. We thought alike. We worked very much in sync with one another. And Sterling said something that I just went, that is perfect. And that is, he goes, you can take all your accolades, all your awards, all that stuff. You've got them up on the wall, and you can look at them and be proud of them and all that kind of good stuff. But at the end of the day, those awards, they ain't going to love you back, and they ain't going to pay the bills.
Wow.
And so that has stuck with me ever since. Yeah, it's wonderful to be acknowledged, to be appreciated. Absolutely. But I think for folk like yourself, myself, I don't think that that's the reason why we're doing this. I'm certainly not. I'm certainly not. Doing engineering for a gold record or a platinum record. That stuff is great, but first of all, those are farther and fewer between. And then second of all, those things, they're not gonna pay my light bill.
Right.
They're not gonna take care of that. It's going to be down in the trench work. It's the hard stuff that people don't really want to recognize. They, how do I say this? And I don't mean to be a negative person about any of this, but your average person does not realize the effort and energy and amount of time that went into making something presentable for others to appreciate and have an appreciation for.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the Grammy side of things, I love it, but I've got mixed emotions about it.
Wow. What a story, man.
It's crazy.
That
it's
is
absolutely crazy.
Wow. Well, okay, I've kept you on the phone for an hour and a half, but I have one last question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I saw you're the owner of Clockwork Forensic Services. What is that? Tell me about that.
All right. So this was Clockwork Forensic Services is another side caveat of what I do. Clockwork originated from the desire to want me personally wanting to be involved with forensic audio. Now, forensic audio is by far so different from what we know as artists and music producers, engineers, and stuff of that nature. It's really, really scientific. But part of that was a few years back, I started thinking about this, that if let's say it like this. If my hearing went to almost nothing, if I lost my hearing tomorrow, I needed to have the capability of maybe falling back on something else that is somewhat scientific, somewhat still dealing with audio, and get involved with that and be able to actually, provide for my family and myself.
That's very smart.
Okay, so let's fast forward just a little bit. So I started looking into this. I have a colleague that also is a musician. He's a very, very good guitarist, well respected. Love this guy to death. And he goes, "Hey man, if I were you, I would start looking into forensic audio. You'd be a perfect candidate for all of this." Okay, so I did. Well, what I started discovering is that it is nothing, absolutely nothing like recording for a record or for movies or anything of that nature. It is extremely scientific. It's all about proving the science. Now, this is excellent in my humble opinion. I love doing all that stuff, but there is absolutely zero creativity in this whatsoever. It's a lot of comparison, and it's a lot of going back and forth. And gosh, I'll say it like this: I discovered very quickly that I probably, as much as I know about forensic audio, it's probably not something I'm going to be doing anytime soon. I'll say it like this. It's something that I will do if all the wheels fall off and I can't do music anymore, then yes, I'll go to forensic audio. But no, I don't. There's nothing about that I enjoy at all. Nothing about it.
Well, can you give like a
There are
description of forensic audio? I mean, I watch like Forensic Files. What is forensic audio?
Okay. Let me give you an example. So um, let's say you've got good guy, bad guy, and let's see, how can I set this up? Let's say you have an undercover police officer who is out in the task force trying to bust drug dealers. So let's say that police officer actually is capturing some audio on his phone of the drug deal that's about to go down. So that police officer can hand over that audio to someone like me and go, hey, this is this individual. We know this because I was there and I know that it was this individual. And so I need for you, Tim Kimsey, to establish from the recording that I've handed you and another recording that is considered a quote unquote unknown. Can you do a voice comparison for us? And can you tell us if this is the same person? So it gets really interesting really fast.
Right.
So here's where I'm going with all of this, Lauren, is that when I stepped into the forensic audio thing, my mentor is up in New York. He is the guy who told our federal government, yes, this is Osama bin Laden. That is his voice right there. My mentor is the guy who was telling our government.
Oh my gosh.
He was the guy he was that guy.
Wow.
So what he told us, or what he told me was, look, this is great that you know all this stuff about music production, so on and so forth. That's awesome. You can take all of that info and put it over here to the wayside. What we're doing right now is we are proving guilt or innocence. And people's lives really rely upon your ability to prove innocence or guilt. Now, let's take that recording. So if you've got a police officer, he's got a recording. Maybe he was sitting in that person's car as they're talking about drug deals and so on and so forth. That is called a known. That is, the subject matter is known. As a forensic expert, if I have another recording, that could be labeled up as unknown. I have software that is not from this part of the world. We'll just say it like that. I have, yeah, it's audio DAWs. It's basically a program that will do a voice comparison, and it deals with frequencies and how people form their vowels and their consonants in the words. And check this out. In forensic audio, the failure rate of being able to identify a human voice, let's say my voice, for example, the failure rate is like almost nothing.
Really?
It is so incredibly accurate. Incredibly accurate. So forensic audio is literally coming down to proving innocence and guilt. And it's hugely accepted, especially here in this country. I'm known as what is known as a expert witness in forensic audio. And I've got plenty of colleagues out there that do like, oh gosh, huge, I can't call them sessions, but they do these huge files. They do these huge, I don't know what you would call them, these huge court sessions. Yeah. And they are the lifeline. They are the one person who can, I say we are the one person that can distinct whether that person is guilty or innocent.
Wow. Well, that's very cool. I think stuff like that is super interesting.
It's really interesting. The thing that someone has to ask themselves is, can you emotionally keep up with it?
Yeah.
And I think that was the other part for me, was that my very first court case was a civil case. It dealt with a mom and a dad fighting over custody. And man, that's really hard. That's heartstrings being yanked all different kinds of directions. Mm-hmm. And yes, I can still do the forensic audio stuff. Maybe on a criminal case or something like that. That might be a different thing. But here's the thing that I wasn't really prepared for, is that emotional side of it. Is here you are, an expert witness in a court of law. You can't lie, you can't perjure, you can't do this, you can't do that. And all of a sudden you're looking at these individuals who are literally fighting amongst themselves for something that honestly, in my opinion, should be both of theirs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it gets kind of crazy.
Wow.
It gets kind of.
Well, thanks for telling me about that. I saw that on your website and I just thought that was just super cool.
Yeah, like I said, I think I could go back to it if push comes to shove.
Yeah.
And, if we're all told, hey, Lauren can't perform anymore. Well, okay, what about everybody else? No, nobody else can perform anymore either. Okay, well, guess where I'm going? I'll go to forensic audio.
Hey, I mean, listen, the criminals are not going to stop for sure. So you always have work there.
We both know that.
Oh my gosh.
That's exactly right.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for being on my podcast. You are the best, and I have really enjoyed our conversation.
It's great talking to you, Lauren.
If you'd like to get more info on Tim, go to his website, timkimsey.com.
Thank you for tuning in to Groove Lab. I'm hoping that everyone will get a little something out of this conversation that I've had. Stay cool, stay well, stay protected. We'll see you guys soon.
You guys know I'm a newbie at podcasting. There's so much that goes into it. But luckily, I found Anchor, the easiest way to podcast. Not only do they have the tools to help you record and edit, but they also help with distribution. So your voice can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. But the best part is, it's free. Everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Make your voice heard. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I know this was kind of a long episode, but I edited out as much as I could, but I didn't want to take away from mine and Tim's conversation. He's so cool, right? Anyway, we are coming up on the end of the year, and I think I'm going to end season 1 with 2020 and start back up with season 2 sometime next year. That being said, I do have a couple of spots open to finish out the year, a couple interviews. So if you would like to be interviewed, reach out and let me know, or if you know of somebody who you'd like me to chat with, just let me know. I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving and stay safe. This is such a weird year, which is no news to anyone, but I just hope everyone can stay safe while still enjoying the holiday. I'll see you guys back here next week with an interview from Anna Christina Cash. Stay groovy.